Yes, it works.
Got it. Oh. So as it is now, I can't see anything other but my own screen. So please let me know when I should start the webinar, start speaking.
Yeah. I think, Christian, please go ahead and introduce yourself and just shortly run the demo.
Yeah. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Christian Elkjær, and I'm the speaker for today's session, where I'm going to talk a bit about ESG in general, just shortly, how we see the trend currently, and then I'm gonna go into more how we in Dun & Bradstreet work with data and how we have created an ESG intelligence solution. And I'm gonna demo the solution as well. So basically, I'll speak a bit about myself in a moment. It will be very short. Then a bit about, I said why ESG, so a bit about why do we think in Dun & Bradstreet that ESG is a hot topic at the moment. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. Then I'm going to go into our solution, the ESG score, what is it, and how can it be delivered, and so on. And maybe talk a bit about how can this actually be used in your risk management, in your daily risk management. And then I'm going to show our tool as well. Yeah.
Christian, sorry to jump in. We have an attendee who said that he or she cannot see the full screen. Do you just want to take down the sharing session and just open it up again?
Yeah, I can try to do that.
Yeah.
2 seconds. Stop sharing. I'm not sharing now, right?
You're not sharing right now.
Good. So basically, I'll do like this. Share. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm being informed that it works now.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Thank you.
I'm gonna continue. And then in the end, I'm gonna give you a live demo of one of our web applications where you can see these ESG information. So you can also get a feeling of how does it actually work in real life, the solution. And of course, I'll try to make room for questions in the end. So very shortly about me. So my name is Christian. I work as a subject matter expert for Dun & Bradstreet Europe. My main focus is to support companies in Denmark and in the Nordics when it comes to solutions that has some kind of risk management to it, I would say. So basically, it could be financial risk management, credit risk management. It could be know your customer compliance risk. So it could be like who do I do business with? Who are the owners and beneficial owners? Are any sanctioned? Are any mentioned in adverse media and so on? And latest, one of the very hot topics is what we're going to talk about today is ESG risk. I have a background where I've been for 6 years in Euler Hermes, which is called Allianz Trade today within credit management. I've also worked in Nordea, and I have a master in financial accounting and auditing. So that was shortly about me. So when talking about why do we in Dun & Bradstreet, why have we decided to spend a lot of resources to be able to support our clients when it comes to ESG risk on a global scale? And I think this slide actually shows it very good. As you can see, there has been an substantial increase of regulations that affects this area. So A lot of you might heard about the taxonomy that's being introduced. We have the sustainability, the global supply chain due diligence action in Germany. We are seeing that we expect also that this supply chain due diligence will come out to more countries. So also other countries within Europe needs to look into this. But you can see, and this is not a total view of all the legislation that has been introduced, but just a part of it. So this is something that is, you can say, high on the agenda on the regulators as well. So this is, of course, something that has gotten our attention, and we look into our current data and see how can we support our clients to when they need to look into all of this. So when talking about why, we see that there are actually there are different reasons why companies start to look into sustainability and ESG in general. So some of the main reasons are, of course, when there are legal requirements to do so. So it could be that you're a large company that needs to report according to the EU taxonomy. It could also be that you need to make sure that your supply chain is also sustainable. So you need to look into these things. Could also be that you have decided as a company to live up to some of the goals and standards there are in the market. Could be the UN Sustainability Development Goals. It could be what's called there are other goals that you can sign up and report to, so you can show as a company that you are committed to be more sustainable. And then we actually see more and more that people want to do this in a more, you can say, reputational risk aspect. So they want to do this to make sure that they are not mentioned as being a company that is involved with other companies that uses child labor, for example, or has been polluting a lot and so on. So it's also more in like a corporate social responsibility aspect. We see that companies engage in these kinds of ESG and sustainability things. So when talking about Dun & Bradstreet and our ESG rankings, it's important to understand our general business to begin with. So basically, what we do in Dun & Bradstreet is we collect company data all around the world. We collect it directly from the official sources, meaning that we are data owners. So we collect the data directly from the official company house in every country on a daily basis. And our bread and butter business is to collect this data and then feed it into our global data cloud, which you can see in the middle of this slide. And there are actually more than 510 million records, I think, today in this data cloud, meaning that we have more than 500 million companies worldwide in this data cloud. And we can give access to this data cloud to our clients so they can get access to this company data, whether it's for master data purposes, so to keep their customer data updated, could be name, addresses, and so on, could be to use some of our analytics that we build on top of this data we have, could be get a credit assessment of a company, could be to know who you're dealing with, who are actually the owner of this company that I'm dealing with, to see how many of my suppliers are actually within the same family tree. And the same goes for the customers. How many customers do we have in the same family tree, to see what is actually my total exposure or what is my total spend. And what we have decided to do in terms of ESG is that we really wanted to support our clients, especially our global clients. So our ambition is to look at the data cloud we have and say we actually want to be able to calculate an ESG score, saying something about a company's ESG risk on all companies in this data cloud. And this is a very ambitious goal, and this will, I can say for certain, we will probably never be able to do that on all companies, because of course we need to be able to collect some data on the companies being able to score it within ESG. But that's basically the goal. Then we want to be able to provide this data, these ESG rankings, to our clients in several ways. So you can see that in the bottom of this slide. So basically at the moment we have 2 web applications, one called D&B Risk Analytics Supplier Intelligence. That is our platform that contains, you can say, all kinds of third-party risk assessment of a company. So it's not only ESG risk, it's also credit risk, financial risk. It could be legal events. It could be ownership, beneficial ownership, screening against sanctions, PEP, adverse media. It could be cyber risk and so on. So it could be a lot of different kinds of risk that is included in that tool. Then we have a module within risk analytics called Risk Essentials. So that's basically a module only focusing on ESG risk. So basically this is a tool where you can look up companies in the globally and see the ESG risk attached to these companies. And that's the platform I'm going to show you later today. We can, of course, also deliver the data that we have through APIs. So meaning that you can integrate these rankings, ESG rankings, or whatever other data we have directly into your own IT systems. So whether it's CRM systems, whether it's ERP systems or other systems, then our API is fully integratable to those systems. And in the end, we are also able to deliver it in more old school ways. So it could be through a batch file. So we have clients saying that we would like these ESG ranking on all our supplier base, and then they send us 50,000 suppliers. And then we enrich with the ESG rankings and provide that file back to them. So that's also a possibility. How is our ESG growth? So as you can see, this is a fairly new thing that we have started to look at. So we started in 2021, and our growth, our coverage has grown significantly since. And I can see here that it says 1st of November, we are around 42 million. And what I have heard is, I think at the end of this month, we are around actually 72 million records that we have an ESG score on. So our coverage has increased significantly. But you might also remember that I told you that our total database was 500 million. So we are unfortunately not able to score all companies within this database. But it is also important to have in mind what kind of companies that are in this database. So it's all kinds of companies. It can be sole traders. It can be government companies. It can be associations and so on. So of course, the smaller a company are, usually there are less information available on those companies, and therefore it can be very difficult to calculate an ESG ranking if we don't have any good information on that. So when deciding to do an ESG ranking on companies, this is of course not just something that you do and you just say, okay, then we just want to rank it like this, and then we go forward with that. We have looked into what kind of standards there are on the market for doing these kinds of rankings. And there are actually several standards, such as the SASB standards, there are the Group Reporting Initiative, and so on. And we have looked into these, and what these standards actually do is they say something about how should we weight different ESG topics dependent on which industry the company is working within. So basically what it says is that if you have a company working within the shipping industry, it could be that there are some topics within ESG you should weigh higher within the ranking than other topics compared to, for example, another industry like banking industry and so on. So we have used these industries to decide how should we actually weight different topics compared to the industries. And our ESG score is an ESG score from 1 to 5, where 1, then you have a very low risk in terms of ESG, and if it's a 5, there is some high risk associated with the ESG. And then we calculate an ESG score on each of the 3 pillars within ESG, so an E score, an S score, and a G score. And we actually also, and within the E, S, and G, there are actually 31 subtopics that are also being ranked from 0 to 100, actually. So it's actually very complex, this score, but the output of the score is quite easy to use, and it is 1 to 5, and it is, you can say, like a traffic light indicator you can use. So just to highlight, what is it that our ESG solution does is, and why is it a strong solution compared to other solutions? So what our solution does is it has a very good coverage. So basically, we are able to calculate an ESG score on both public and private companies, both small and large companies. Our score is based on real data on the companies you look at, meaning that we collect data on that exact company that you're looking at and calculate a score on that data on that company. So we are not doing industry averages and so on. You can, when you look at a company and we provide a bad ESG score, a bad ESG ranking, we call it, then it is because we have been able to collect data on that specific company that is weighting negatively in the model. So it could be that we can see that this company is actually using a lot of carbon emissions compared to the industry average. Our solution is stable and it is up and running 24/7. And currently the data is updated on a monthly basis. And this is something we're also looking into. Maybe we can do actually even more updated data, but currently our scores is updated on a monthly basis. So what is it that we are actually looking at when we are talking about ESG? So basically, ESG has an E pillar, an S pillar, and a G pillar. And you can see that there are 13 topics that are on the left side within each pillar. And then there are actually 31 subtopics, where you can see in the right side of each pillar. And we try to collect data from sources on each of these subtopics on all companies. And it can be that within one subtopic, there can be different sources of data for one subtopic. So it could be for energy management that we actually have different sources. So there are different kind of data going into that subtopic. But these are the, you could say, topics where we try to calculate data, try to collect data and rank it. And now you might sit and think, okay, but are you able to collect all these kind of data on all companies? And the simple answer to that is no, we are not. But we might be able to collect on some of the points. And of course, typically how it is the larger the company is, then they might do an ESG report, and CSR report. Then there are typically more information available, and we will be able to have more of these subtopics available. And on very small companies, we might only have 2 or 3, 4 subtopics within each of the pillars. So that's how it works. And what kind of ESG data do we then collect? Well, who are the sources for the data we have? So what you see on the left side, the Dun & Bradstreet Data Cloud, that was actually our cornerstone. That was what we started to look at. So we had an existing data cloud with a lot of company data. What of these kind of data could we actually use for the ESG purpose? And we actually had a lot of data that we could actually use for this purpose as well. It could be data like payment behavior. It could be diversity data. So we actually know a lot about board composition and stuff like that. So we use a lot of these data. We have spend data and so on. We also have shipping data and so on. Data that we can use in our model. So we use that. Then we have an engine that we use for mainly for marketing purposes, which are crawling news all over the world. And we have used that to actually find ESG triggers in global news, meaning that we are looking for different kinds of ESG that can be mentioned in news related to companies. So basically, it could be that a company has been mentioned in an article that they have been using child labor. Then we use that in our ESG scoring. Then there are, of course, a lot of legal and government data. It could be fines, for example, very usable kind of data point. So if a company has received a fine for, could be that they have not, polluted a lot, or they have not treated their employees in the correct manner or whatever, then we can use that kind of data in our model. We have a cybersecurity score, a separate cybersecurity score that we also use in this model. We, of course, look in annual reports, CSR report, ESG reports. We actually have something called natural language progressing, where when we look at a company, we also scrape the company website and see whether they mention something on their website that could be ESG related. And then we use that in the model as well. And then you might think, oh, that sounds a bit dangerous, because then it could be subject to greenwashing, which means that it's not often that company mentions on their website if they're doing something bad, but they often mention all the good things that they do. And of course, this is actually something that we take into account in our model. So all our scores actually comes with a score of the data behind the score. So we actually say that if we're only able to get data from company websites and like kind of soft sources, then it will not be weighted as highly in the model as of, for example, an official registry or an annual report that has been audited and so on. We also look at ISO certification, green certifications. We see whether people live up to some of these international goals. Could be could be some of the goals that I mentioned in the beginning. And then we also actually have something called a self-assessment, meaning that if you look up a company in our tool and you think, oh, I can see that there are not that many data points available to calculate this ESG score, we would like to get some more information from this from this customer or supplier. Then you're actually able to send a self-assessment questionnaire through our services to the supplier or the customer, and then they can fill out a lot of more detailed information. And when they have done that, that will go through a quality check, and then our scores will be updated accordingly, and you will also receive a copy of the self-assessment yourself. But I can show you more about that in a moment. So this is very high level how our ESG score methodology is. So basically what we have is a lot of data sources on the left where we collect data. Then what we do is we process all that data and we quality assure it. Then we normalize it and weight it based on the international standards. So based on industry industries. And then the output is an E score, an S score, and a G score, and ultimately an ESG ranking. And why how can you actually use this? So basically, how you can use this is you can get a quick overview of whether there is a risk associated to your business partner, whether it's a low risk or a high risk. So how you should see our solution is like a pre-screening solution. That's typically how our current clients use it. So basically what they do is they say, okay, we want to risk assess our suppliers or our customers. And then what we're actually able to do, due to the fact that we have a very good coverage, is that we can take the whole supplier base, whether it's 1,000 or 100,000, and then we can upload it to one of our web applications. You can also get it through API or through a batch, and then you can actually get a view quite quickly from, actually it can take just a day, and then you can see your whole supplier base. You can see dashboards, how are they actually positioned in terms of ESG risk. And then you can say, okay, we have 100,000 suppliers, and we can actually see there are 1,000 suppliers that has a 5 ESG ranking, which is the worst. Should we maybe do something about that? And then you can go in and see which suppliers is this. And then you can maybe say, okay, are there any of these suppliers that we still want to work with? There could be a very good reasons that you want to. Then you might say, okay, but we can also see that on some of these, there are not that much information available. Maybe we should send out a self-assessment questionnaire to them that they can fill out and maybe improve their ESG score. Because it's important to have in mind that our score is a view of whether we have been able to collect some data automatically on that specific company, which says whether there is a high or low risk in terms of ESG on that company. It is necessarily not the absolute truth about a company's ESG profile, because it can be that there are information about that company that we have not been able to automatically collect, which says that this company is actually the best company in the world in terms of ESG. And then when they maybe if they fill out a self-assessment questionnaire or in other ways provide that kind of information, maybe the score can be improved. And yeah, in our tools we monitor the score, so you can also see like in over time how it changes and so on. Yeah, and why can you use how can you use this ESG score? So actually we see a lot of different business cases at the moment for our ESG score. I think the most common reason for using our ESG score at the moment are when we're talking about supplier risk management, meaning that the most of our customers use it to assess their supplier base and get you can say a quick assessment, a view of their whole supplier base to see whether there are some risk that they should maybe look more into and so on. We also have clients looking into using this in more, you can say, for their customers. So maybe when they interact with customers, they use this as one of their risk assessments together with a credit risk assessment. Maybe they also look at this and say, okay, we need to take into account that if there is a high risk, maybe we need someone manually to look into this and decide whether we want to take a risk, a commercial risk on this one, to say, okay, yeah, we have seen that there is a high ESG risk, but we think maybe we can do this business even though because of this and this reason. We also see that some are looking into whether they can use this into their own model. So it could be within the banking industry, within insurance industry, and so on. But this is in a very premature level at the moment, I would say. Why this is actually quite good to use is also for reporting perspective, because it's a it's a score from 1 to 5, so it's very easy to use in your reporting. So a lot of our clients that uses this to say, okay, both maybe internally to say, okay, we have 100,000 suppliers, they have an average score of 3.1. And then they can report on this also externally and say, okay, we are actually working on improving the ESG on our supplier base. So what they're actually doing is then they maybe look at some of the high risk and saying, can we actually substitute some of these suppliers with other suppliers that does not have a high risk, or could we maybe ask them to fill out a questionnaire that could inform more thoroughly about their business, and maybe that could affect the score, and so on. So they use it for their own reputation to report how are we actually working with this. And this is a very, you can say, measurable thing, because it is like a number from 1 to 5 that you can use, and you can say, okay, we have of our total supplier database, only 3% is very high risk compared to, in relation to ESG, and we're actually working on improving this furthermore. So this could also help companies in their own storyline externally. So I think that was it with the slide. So now I actually want to jump over to a live demo of our web application. So just 2 minutes and I will jump into and now I'll probably be stopped sharing, I can see, so 2 seconds. Let's do like this. Can you see my screen again?
Yes, we can see everything.
Yeah, and Asada, please let me know whether you can see. 2 seconds, just do like this. Can you see also the risk analytics platform I'm showing now?
Yes.
Perfect.
I can see everything. Yeah.
So basically, this is our web application called Risk Essentials. So this is only focusing on ESG. We also have a module called Risk Analytics, where you can see not only ESG information, but actually also supplier risk scores, credit scores. You can see financial information, so balance sheet, profit and loss. You can see ownership, both legal linkage and beneficial ownership. You can screen against sanctions and so on. But today we're focusing on our ESG, so that's why I'm showing this one, because it's a bit more simple to understand. But basically what this is connected to our global data cloud with more than 500 million companies, and you can look up companies worldwide. Then you can see our ESG rankings on those companies. You can add them to your portfolio, and you can see different dashboards. So what you can actually see on this page is that I have looked up 46 companies. That is the DUNS numbers. That's the unique IDs we provide to every legal entity around the world. And we can see here that some of the companies, how they have been positioned in terms of ESG score. So the vast majority of my portfolio is in the good area, but I also have some companies that doesn't have the best ranking. We can also see over here some of the companies I've looked up that the different pillars. So the E score, I have 4 companies which is very poor and so on. And if I go to the S score, see, I only have 1 company that doesn't perform very good in that performs very poor in the S score, and so on. So here we can see within each of the pillars. But we could also just try to look up a company, and now I'm just gonna look for something in, could be, let's see, I don't know, what should we take? We can take a search for oil and gas and just search for that and see if we can find something. So maybe we should take something that is not, take this one, which is, I'm not, India. We can try to take this one. I'm actually not sure. This is a live demo, so sometimes we can choose an example. And now I'm actually taking a company from India, and I know we cover India, but I'm actually not sure whether we have information on this exact company, but let's have a look. So basically what we can see here is that I pulled the ESG report on this company, and we can see that we were actually able to calculate a score on this company in India called Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited. It has a medium ESG score of 3, and we can actually see that all the sub-scores is also getting a score of 3. If we want to see more in this aspect, we can go into the actual score. And what we can see here is that the ESG ranking is 3, which is a medium score. So this is a yellow on the traffic light, you can see. We also say something about the data depth of this score. So that has actually an A, which is actually quite good, meaning that we have a lot of different data sources available. So it actually, the best thing is A, and it goes all the way down to, I think it's F or something like that. And again, the data depth is quite important to have in mind when looking at the score, because the lower the data depth is, the less information we actually have to calculate the score. This is actually quite important, this thing we see over here on the right side, the industry average, because here we can actually see how does this company, how does that score compare to the industry average. And what we can actually see is that this company called Oil and Natural Gas is actually getting an average score of 3 compared to the industry average of 3.32. So this company is actually performing better than the industry average. And why is it performing better? We can see that it is most likely due to the E-score, where they get a 3 compared to the industry average, which has an average score of 3.63. The industry we are looking at is oil and gas exploration and production. So this is the industry they're working within, and that's the industry we are comparing. We can see that on the S-score, they have an average score of 3, where actually the industry average has a better score of 2.69. And when it comes to the governance score, again, they are very stable with a score of 3 compared to the industry average of 2.25. So it's actually this E-score that does that the overall score is actually a bit better than the industry average. And if we go down, we can look more into in detail why the score is. So now we get into each of the pillars. So we can see here in terms of the environmental ranking, the E-score, it has a score of 3, and the data depth is C. So that means we have core D&B data, we have D&B scores, we have natural language processing, and maybe also ESG self-assessment. And then we can see some of the subtopics scored from 0 to 100. 100 is best, 0 is worse, how they are performing within each of these data points. So you can see we actually have quite a lot of data within this E-score available. So we can see they are performing quite average on the climate risk and greenhouse gas emissions and land use and biodiversity. And they're actually performing quite good on the down here on the water management and so on. So these are the subtopics. And now you might sit and think, yeah, but what is actually behind this data field and this data field? And as our product is at the moment, we do not provide that, you can say, the actual data behind each of this, because there can be a lot of data sources behind each of this. So this is something we're looking at, and we call it audit-ready data, whether we should be able to in even more detail provide the actual data behind each of these subtopics. But at the moment, this is what you get. So you get an score, and you get how we score each of these topics. And then if we go down to the social ranking, we can see that actually we have quite a lot of topics available on this company from India, where we can see that they are performing quite good. So we have some certifications related to social-related certifications where they're scoring very good. We also have some information about diversity where they are quite average. Maybe this is pulling down the score a bit compared to the top ones. So maybe they're not that diverse in the board and so on, and in the company itself, in terms of maybe having females, having women, maybe having veterans and so on. We can see that the cyber risk is also kind of medium. So maybe it could also be that we have some information related to this specific company that they have some kinds of vulnerability in terms of certain types of cyber risk. And then we have supply engagement, also kind of medium. So that could, for example, be payment behavior and stuff like that. And then in the end, we have the governance score, where we have 3 scores available, also performing quite average, I would say. And then it turns up in 3 underlying scores and ultimately an ESG ranking. And what you need to have in mind is that you can, for example, see a company that has maybe a 3, 4, and 4, and then still have a 3 ESG ranking. And that could be because the information within the pillar where the good ranking is more is weighted highly. It has a better data depth, but it could also be that even though the subtopic doesn't score that good, it's actually better than the industry average, and that actually affects the overall score positively. So it's very important to have in mind that the industry average is something that is very important in this, because we look at the company itself and then we compare it to how they actually do compared to the industry average. The last thing I want to show you before we go to the questions is that let's say you look at this company and you say, this is a very important supplier, and we would actually really like to have even more information. It could be that you have, of your total supplier base, you have a couple of hundreds or thousands where you say, these are very strategically important, so we need more information. So basically, if you have a contact name and email, you can actually request them to fill out a self-assessment. And what actually happens, I can just show you very quickly. So I'll just show you here. I hope you can see my screen still, even though I changed the slide. Can you see that, Asada?
Yeah.
Good. So basically, when you send a self-assessment questionnaire to a supplier, they will receive an email with a link where they will go into this web page. So basically, you can see that they say, "Welcome, Christian Elkjær. You need to complete a self-assessment on D&B Denmark AS." So I've actually sent one on the company that I work for to myself. And basically, what you will see in a moment is that this is a very detailed questionnaire. But the client doesn't need to fill out everything. They only need to fill out some very high level information here, which is needed. So that's all the ones with the red star here you need to fill out, and a lot of it will be pre-filled. But it could be, for example, that we don't have the phone number. You need to fill out how many full-time employees, part-time employees, and so on, stuff like that. And then you can actually go into all of these sub-questions, and I'll not go into every question, but maybe you're sitting on okay, it could be interesting to know about scope 1, 2, and 3, and then they can say, okay, but we monitor in terms of scope 1. And then if you say yes to that, then you need to fill out, how many emissions do you use? And it's always explained how you need to do it. And it could also be that, okay, do your company have facilities that uses electricity? I think most companies has that, and you say yes. Then you need to say, okay, what is the total electricity usage? And then you fill out that. And then you actually need to also document the use that you have been using. So that's how this questionnaire works. Every time you say yes to something, new questions will turn up where you will need to fill out, okay, but how much do you use, and what are your policies around that, and so on. And then you need to actually document that in terms of uploading documentation for that. And then when the client has filled out all the things that they are able to do, they can send it in, and then it will go through a quality check, meaning that we have a quality assurance team that will receive this, and they will go through the questionnaire. So basically, they will see the answers and see whether this actually also corresponds to some of the information that we have on the company. And especially that the documentation that has been uploaded, that actually also looks to be correct. So they have not uploaded a picture of a pony instead of actually electricity bills and so on. So this is how this works, and this is very thoroughly. And when the client has filled it out and it has been through our quality check, then the sub scores that you saw in the ESG rankings, they will be updated accordingly, and you will also get a copy of the filled questionnaire yourself. Thank you. I think I was almost in time. So I think we have 10 minutes for questions.
Yes.
I'll just unshare my screen 2 seconds.
Thank you, Christian. I'm sure it's we have plenty of data to go through still, but I also see that we have a line of questions we want to go through. So one of the questions is, will a company's ESG rating be implicated by their financial rating? For instance, two companies that are delivering the same product from the same country, but one of them have a low financial performance and the other one has a fantastic financial performance. Will they have the same ESG score or a score that differs?
So basically, I think a quick answer is you're not allowed to use a statistical model, credit model, for example, that predicts the likelihood of failure. You're not allowed to use that in this ESG model. But basically, we can use some of the information that is used in these kind of models in the ESG score, and that we actually do. So we have some supplier rankings which are not directly predicting likelihood of bankruptcy that can be used in these types of models, but we are not allowed to use directly, you can say, probability of defaults in this model, in the ESG models. So I would say there's it will be somewhat affected because we use some of the same data fields that are used in the score, in the credit scores. We use some of the same data in this model, but we cannot use the score itself in the model.
Then another registrant is asking, how often is the score data updated? But I believe you said once per month, right?
Yeah, so basically it is updated monthly. I think we are looking into a project where we see, because all our other data, as I told you, is collected directly from the official sources. So meaning whenever a data point is updated at a local registry, it's actually in our database the next day. And that's actually what we want to do with the ESG score as well. We want to actually be able to update it as soon as possible. But at the moment, it is monthly updated. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible to trigger notifications on news articles for specific companies? For instance, if a company that engages in child labor activities will be an interesting insight to have. Also, how do you compare yourself to, for instance, RepRisk and some other providers that offer the same in terms of new sentiment?
If we take the first thing about child labor, for example, or what I actually call adverse media screening. So basically, these kinds of adverse media screening is used in our ESG model. So it screens for ESG triggers, we call it. So you can say it could be child labor, for example. If there is something mentioned, it's used in the model, but you don't get the exact information yourself that this is due to child labor media, that this score is as it is. But we have other solutions that you can use for screening companies. So basically screening for sanctions, PEP, but also adverse media. And the adverse media can be divided into different categories where you can also screen against child labor, for example. So you can screen a company whether they have used that or whether they have done environmental criminalities, or whether they have done tax evasion or whatever in relation to adverse media. And then you can actually see the exact articles that you get back when you screen the company. So we have solutions for that, but that's not part of the, I would say, directly in the ESG.
Yeah, and then there was a benchmark up against RepRisk and some other providers that offer the same in terms of.
So
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in web risk, I must admit. So I would really not like to say something about them. I really don't want to talk about competitors, but what I can say is that our unique selling point is that we have a large coverage. So there are not many companies worldwide that covers as many companies globally as we do, both small and large companies. We calculate our ESG score on real company data, meaning on data we can find on that exact companies. A lot of the other providers in the market, they do industry averages, meaning that if you look on companies within the same industry, they will get the same score because it looks just as industry averages and not on actual data on that exact company. And then there are companies out there that you can say are more thoroughly than we are in terms of when you order an ESG, then it's more like an ESG report on a company. Then they will have people manually sitting and creating a ESG report for you, which will be very thorough. They will probably also do interviews with the company and so on to get all the information for you. So I think that's another product that we deliver here. So our is that we have a good coverage. It's updated, it's based on actual data, and you can get it instantly. So what I talked about before, that's also another price point, I would say. So when you have people manually creating large reports for you. So that's what I can say about that.
And Christian, how well is the D&B ESG score recognized by NGOs in general?
Oh, that's a good question. As I say, it is a quite new solution. So I think I need to get back on that one. I actually don't know. We have a team that is responsible for this in the US and UK, and they might know more about this in detail than I actually do. But I'll try to investigate that and get back to you on that one. But we see more and more that companies uses this, and as I told you, they use it for, you could say, like a pre-screening to get a view when they have large volumes in terms of customers or suppliers, and they want to go into this, and maybe they don't know exactly what to do. Then this is a very good tool to quite fast get a view of, okay, is there something here that we actually need to look more into? Is there some of our suppliers that has a very high risk associated to it? Because what you need to have in mind is that our ESG score is based on real data. So basically, and it's not that easy to find very, you can say, negative data in terms of ESG on companies. So actually, a large part of our database, they will be in the medium and good scores. Of course, there will be companies in the lower rankings as well. But if they have a low ranking, you can be certain that it's because we actually have real data on that company that is negative, meaning that it can be that they are polluting a lot of carbon emissions compared to the industry average, or we can see that they have been using child labor, or we can see that they have received fines and so on. So that's how it's used.
Okay, so we have 4 minutes till we end the webinar, and I just want to say there are many questions. Most of them are anonymous. So I think what we will do is gather everything in written and just send it over with the recordings and your demo request, if you want to release a demo. Did you mention that possibility, Christian?
No, I didn't. But of course, if you have looked at this webinar and you thought that it looked interesting, of course, we can talk more into, you can get a free trial of the solution that I showed. You could also get a free trial of the more enhanced solutions, also covering credit risk and compliance risk, adverse media screening, and so on. And you could also do a batch screening or whatever that could be relevant for you. So if you want to test out this in more detail, please reach out to us, and of course we can support you. And I can also just say here in the end that we have events coming up locally in each of the 4 Nordic countries at least. So please have a look at our webpage and follow these events. I know that at least in Denmark we will have an ESG event here in April. So yeah, please follow and sign up if you think there's something interesting.
Yeah, and as Christian said, if you want to test D&B ESG Intelligence on your own and test it for your own company, you can fill out the form I will send shortly, and then a compliance expert will reach out to you and help you plug in and get started. And you can have 14 days where you can sit with your colleagues and stakeholders and test it out. I think we have 2 minutes for a last question. So what to choose? Will a company, okay, I already took that one. So can the data on each supplier be shared in a CSV format for internal analytic purposes?
I'm not sure I understand, but our ESG rankings and the sub rankings, and you can actually also, when we're talking about batch and API, you can also get some what we call you can call it where we explain why the rankings is as they are, but it's in very high level explanations. You can get that. If you're talking about background data behind the score, so the actual data, that is not something that we are able to deliver in batch as it is right now. We are looking into doing this. We call it an audit ready data. So basically we can deliver all the data variables that actually feeds into this score. But that's not what we're able to do at the moment. On ad hoc basis, if you have looking at a score and you cannot understand it, we can deliver on a company on ad hoc basis the reasons and the sub data behind the score.
And if the question is more practical, on a practical note, is it possible to extract a CSV format from the system and just share it with your colleagues?
Yeah. So if you have a portfolio within the web application I showed you, you can extract that in a Excel CSV file. You can also extract PDF reports and so on. So yeah, that is possible. You can also upload, so you don't have to look up companies one by one. So you can upload as many companies as you want, so you can get them into the system. And you can actually also do that in terms of contacts if you want to do self-assessments, and you can also bulk upload self-assessment. So if you want to send out 500 self-assessment in one go, you can do that as well.
Okay, so actually time is up. I would love to just continue, but I promise we'll get back in written in afterhand, and then you can stay in touch with us and we will stay in touch with you. So thanks for today and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.